truly a man who has no moral or ethical boundaries, who simply does whatever he feels is good for him, wherever. And you see this throughout the movie. The thing to remember as well about these men is that within this demographic, in the finance world, there is a far greater, proportionally greater percentage of the people who work in this world who are classified as psychopaths. Leonardo DiCaprio is more than just an actor. He is an artist. Not all actors are artists. Some actors are accountants. They're just in it for the money and they repeat themselves over and over again. Leonardo DiCaprio is an artist and an activist, which is what makes his films sometimes so difficult to watch. He is a mirror on ourselves. And in The Wolf of Wall Street, I think he cut so close to the bone that he actually made Hollywood uncomfortable, which is why he didn't get an Oscar for his role, which is possibly why he hasn't received an Oscar for every single role he has ever played. And with The Wolf of Wall Street, I think he went even further. I think he actually just crunched right into the bone, into the marrow of what makes Hollywood, indeed America, and increasingly the whole world tick. The film starts off with an illusion, an advertising campaign that is incredibly convincing, and it immediately draws us in, because that's precisely what an advertising campaign is meant to do, what the public relations industry is all about. The public relations industry is not about telling us the truth. It is about creating an illusion that will make us believe in something that is not the truth at all. And I first came across this the first time I visited Chicago, which was towards the end of my trip, once around the planet. And writing the book, My Year of Beds, was in response to the 2008 global financial meltdown, which is indeed the reason that Scorsese and DiCaprio made this movie, also in response to the 2008 meltdown. Because I think something happened in that period due to the internet, due to the fact that more and more information was getting out into the world that previously could be kept behind wraps, behind the PR curtain. The banking industry, the finance industry, was slowly but surely becoming exposed for what it really was. And I think most people were utterly shocked by this. I know I certainly was. And I got to Chicago, and I walked down the Magnificent Mile, which is one of the world's most exclusive shopping streets. And there I talk about today's bankers, which are no longer the people who look after our money, but the people who rob us of our money. Today, the robbers flaunt their wealth on the Magnificent Mile, one of the world's most exclusive shopping streets, where they adorn themselves with the world's most exclusive and most expensive merchandise. Hugo Boss, Bloomingdale's, Neiman Marcus, Saks, Fifth Avenue, Macy's, Max Mara, Vera Wang, and on and on and on. The glittering brands roll out the red carpet for these men and women with limitless credit. Beautifully groomed, they stroll through the front doors of the world's biggest banks, glide up glass elevators to adorn offices where with manicured fingertips they enter secret passwords that open the doors to all the world's money. And slowly the bankers have become the robbers who steal the world's value away. And they get away with this because the world has forgotten that money has no value. It is a measuring stick against which we measure the things of real value, land, sheep, or human endeavor. Money was created purely to make trade easier. But by slow degrees, bankers have turned this concept upside down. Until today, we are brainwashed into believing that the ruler that measures the land has more value than the land itself. And this is the premise of the Wolf of Wall Street, and the belief that money truly is the only thing of any value. And so, with this little analysis, I want to strip away the illusion just a little bit. And in order to do that, we need to change this poster. This is a poster of Leonardo DiCaprio after hours of grooming and makeup and fiddling with his hair and perfect lighting and so on. I mean, he looks the part. Of course he looks the part. He always looks the part. But let's take him away and let's put the real guy in there. The Gordon Balfour of the mid-80s. This is a real picture of him taken in one of his many articles that were written about him. Some complimentary, others less so. But even this doesn't quite give us the right picture of what we are dealing with. This gets closer, but we need to once again remove Leonardo DiCaprio. And there we go. Fixed it. Gordon Balfour. The man about the movie. And we need to have no qualms about what we say, because according to Gordon Balfour's very own biography, these things actually happened, and he put them out in the world, and he's proud. The first scene we see is Balfour being introduced to Wall Street, and then he meets up with a guy called Mark Hanna. Once again, we are not talking about a fictitious character here. The man exists. Whether he said exactly what was said at that infamous lunch is besides the point. The point is, what was said is the truth. The Hanna character tells the Balfour character, this is the game. You keep the ball rolling, you keep the wheel spinning. And what you do is you keep scraping away the profit, and you take the money and you put it in your pocket. You take the money and you put it in your pocket. Everything else is just a paper chase. There is no reality in the market. Nobody knows if it's going up or down. What you're doing is you're creating an illusion. It's all about the sale. He realizes what this is all about, and we get this incredibly important moment where he recruits his team, a bunch of lowlifes, uneducated. The only thing they can do well is lie. They can sell you anything by lying glibly without any remorse. The greatest liars make the most money. And this is a reality we don't want to talk about, because it pulls into question everything we believe about everything. The whole Protestant work ethic that because you've got money you must be higher up the evolutionary scale. It ties in with how we've been taught to think about ourselves in a fundamental religious way. Money equals morals. The more money you have, the more moral you must be. This is something that I pick up in Searching for Galileo, in which I drive once again around the USA. And I once again go to Chicago, and in Chicago, this time around, I start questioning the advertising industry and how the advertising industry manipulates the minds of all of us. And I introduce you to a man called Eddie Bernays, which I've spoken to in other podcasts and vlogs. But here, in the end, I'm in Austin, Texas, and I meet up with a young biotech engineer. And we have this conversation. I address the group, the biotech engineer. They're at a conference, and I address them, and I end up with saying, our purpose in life is to make humans better, to which they all had a completely negative reaction. They believed they were the best. They bought into the American public relations machine, which is what Hollywood is. It's a public relations machine. It says America is the best. And if America is the best, well, there is no improvement to be had. So in Austin, I meet this young man, and we go for a coffee. And at this point already, I'm starting to piece together what needs to change, the fiat monetary system and how it's created, who earns, how they earn, what gets paid for, what gets rewarded, and so on. And I get back to this idea of that this new bartering tool needs to have an inbuilt discrimination against unbeneficial behavior so that it cannot pay for behaviors that are not ideal. So this young man goes on to say, there is a problem in this country, which is that the hidden hand of capitalism is associated with the hidden hand of God. There is something called the Protestant work ethic, and this country suffers from the Protestant work ethic. The Protestant work ethic revolves very much around money as a material representation of having been chosen by God. So you have this tradition in our country of money and wealth being associated with godliness. And then if you see how the culture of America revolves around the idea that morals and ethics and godliness are measured by money, then you can see how this game, this money game, in which Gordon Balfour jumps into with glee, is played, and why it is so successful and why it is not regulated more harshly. It contradicts the very foundations of the thought process of the American mind, but increasingly of the minds of people all around the world. And so we have in this, The Wolf of Wall Street, we have these young male characters, mainly young men. And this is not a discrimination against a certain demographic, it is simply a representation of fact. It is young men today still in the world who drive everything, who drive the technology, who drive the goals. And the question about this is their mindset. Are these young male brains truly in a position to make the decisions that they are making? Cognitive neuroscience says no. Balfour boasts that by the time he's 26, he made 46 million in a year. At the age of 26, his animal brain, the brain that drives his primitive urges, woman, sex, power, have barely connected to his prefrontal cortex, the area in his brain in which he is more regulated, more considerate in his thinking. The connection probably hasn't been made because of the way his brain realized that this behavior that I'm behaving in, the way I'm behaving now, is absolutely beneficial to my survival. So why should I change it? So the 26-year-old brain of Jordan Balfour is probably no more developed than that of a randy teenager. And it comes through in the movies, big time. Cocaine and prostitutes is a reality that people admit to in Wall Street is still occurring today. I'm going to add the clip of the actual Mark Hanna because I want to keep coming back to the fact that this is not an illusion. This is not entertainment. This is activism. This is trying to tell you the truth in a way that is palatable to you. So the real Mark Hanna comes out of jail and is
they talk about these $1,000 an hour girls, and the subject of these girls came up. Mm-hmm. And he says, these girls are $1,000 an hour.
But as the DiCaprio character gets deeper and deeper into this world, he starts meeting up with some pretty shady people. And one of the most shady people is the one that insisted that his name be changed. He who may not be named because he was going to sue. So this character is now played by somebody called Donnie or somebody or other. And you look at this character, and what you see is you see a psychopath. With the Balfour character, with the DiCaprio character, what you see is a sociopath, somebody who simply allows himself to be swept along without question. a weak man, really. But his sidekick, the Donnie character, this person is a psychopath. He is the catalyst that I think pushes the DiCaprio character over the edge by introducing him to ever stronger drugs, by doing things that are just outside of the realm of what any human would consider acceptable behavior. The thing to remember as well about these men is that within this demographic, in the finance world, there is a far greater, proportionally greater percentage of the people who work in this world who are classified as psychopaths than in the rest of humanity. This world attracts a certain mindset that is quite happy with risk, thrive on risk, thrive on this sort of brute force. And you hear this when you look at interviews of the real people. They loved it. They loved it. They actually thrived on it, on the adrenaline, on the stimulation, on this high-pressure cooker stimulation. And so when the DiCaprio character meets up with he who may not be named, what you see, I think, is truly a man who has no moral or ethical boundaries, who simply does whatever he feels is good for him, wherever. And you see this throughout the movie. You know, this whole movie is full of loathsome characters, from the woman to the father, all of them, the acolytes, they're all loathsome characters. But this guy, this sidekick, Donnie, or Danny, he really stands out as sleazeball deluxe. And in real life, he who may not be named, if you look at what he's doing, he is still involved in sleazy, shady dealings all the time. So you have this group of men, young brains, untested, not yet fully connected brains. Their limbic system is not yet fully connected to the prefrontal cortex, and they are representative of what is happening since then, still and now, currently still happening in the world. The world is being run by this kind of brain, a young male brain that is not fully connected yet and that tends towards the very low end of the human considered behavior. Empathetic behavior doesn't play a role. And then you look at the sort of other characters around these guys. The woman. Today, if you research this movie and you sort of see where are these people now, they're all making these little excuses. Oh, I left with the curtains, says Naomi, or what her real name was. Of course, she only left with the curtains. I'm surprised she left with the curtains because none of what she had was legally gotten. So it was probably attached by the court. She didn't leave with only the curtains because she felt bad. It's because she couldn't help it. She didn't have a choice. She was kicked out of the house. And what is happening now? So you look at Margot Robbie, who now plays the character, and somehow she sort of tries to justify the character, that role that she's going to play. There's no justification. These women knew what they were doing.
I'm going to be friends.
There are women in the world who will equally do anything just to get their hands on it.
We're not going to be friends.
When I was watching the sort of debauchery scenes within this office with the strippers and the hookers and the monkeys and goodness no, the chimpanzees, I beg your pardon, I was reminded of another film in which Margot Robbie starred, the opening scene of Babylon, about the start of Hollywood, the birth of Hollywood. Equally ribald scenes of complete debauchery. But then I was reminded of yet another film, Fellini's Satirican. And oddly enough, Martin Scorsese had a tiny little sideways bit part in that he and Fellini were sort of thinking of collaborating on this project. But Fellini's Satirican has an equally debauched flavor, opening scene, or not opening, but sort of midway scene. and I've sort of cut them together. The reason I've cut them together is to point something out. Nothing has changed. We have not fundamentally changed our behavior. We've changed our technology, but we haven't changed our behavior. And that, to me, is the failure of feminism. That still today, women are out there doing these things. Maybe because they like it, but maybe because they have to. And in these scenes, what is amazing to me about these scenes in all of these films is the extras, those who are not stars. These scenes all require that there are people out there in the world who are prepared to do this. Now, I believe that in Babylon and in The Wolf of Wall Street, they used actual prostitutes or porn stars. Okay, so they were professionally selling sex, and I don't know if that made a difference to them or not. But then you look at the other characters, the men in the marching band, the woman who has her hair shaved off, all of these bit players, the woman who has to give blowjobs, all of these demeaning roles, that there are people who are prepared to take them. Why? It has to do with how everything in our world works. Somebody has to demean themselves. Somebody demeans themselves hoping that through doing this, they will somehow rise above this lowly position. Never happens. Because the cycle turns, and as these young men suddenly become remorseful, because they do, you see this, if you start researching this particular field of money and how the finance system works, you will see there's men who are now in their 40s, maybe 50s, who've made their pile of cash, who are now remorseful, who are going, oh, you know, it's not as the way it was, and maybe we shouldn't have, and so on and so forth, but they don't do anything to change it. It's odd to me that so many critics called this film a comedy. I suppose if you consider that there are these complete reprobates who are ripping you off and destroying your life and causing working class people to have to live in tents in order to be able to just get by, that there are people on strike, writers for Hollywood, on strike because they're not earning enough money. If you consider that funny, I don't think you're paying attention. I think you've lost the plot, frankly. And Leonardo DiCaprio, I don't think, ever actually makes a movie just to entertain you. It's always to show you something about the world that you might not have seen, you might have missed. The following is just some cuts from various documentaries that you might want to go and... VPRO has very recently put up very topical documentaries on the finance industry today. One of these little cuts here comes from a VPRO documentary they made 9 years ago. It came out in 2013, at the same time The Wolf of Wall Street came out, in which they expose quants, or high-frequency trading, which at that time even Wall Street didn't know about. Now the entire financial industry is run on this basis. They're all worth looking at in order for you to see what your life is all about, why you live the way you do in the world. And essentially, since 2013, I was in America researching our brains and why we allow this sort of thing to continue. But subsequently, I've now written, This is the Perfect Place for Paradise, in which I make a comment that ties directly into this film, is that the fiat monetary system hinges on one point only, the point of sale. Everything that happens before or after that is meaningless. And so in the film The Wolf of Wall Street, there is this one line, sell me this pen. That's it. That's all it's about. Sell me this pen. You who can sell this pen will go on to great riches within this particular system. And in This is the Perfect Place for Paradise, I try to unravel this, and with a new monetary system, which I'm calling SHIC, the aim is to move the important point away from the point of sale to the point of use, which would shift the entire focus. But I also work on trying to illustrate that it's how you earn, what you earn, when you earn, that makes all the difference. So these guys in The Wolf of Wall Street and every single person in the finance industry is making money, not even at the point of sale anymore, but between the points of sale. High-frequency trading has become so fast that the algorithms are no longer working on the points of sale. They don't care whether you're selling up or down. They just care that you're selling, because they're making your money in the place that is called arbitrage, between the two sales. When the price is going up or when the price is going down, that's where they insert their algorithms and they extract the difference. Tiny amounts of money, but so many of them that they create such a large change in the financial markets that it in fact creates these flash crashes. We cannot win. If you watch the documentaries, you will realize we cannot win in this financial system with the fiat monetary system as it is. We need to change the fiat monetary system fundamentally, and this is what This Is the Perfect Place for Paradise addresses. It says, because fiat is non-judgmental and will happily pay for anything, as long as it makes a profit for those who control it, fiat does not just stifle innovation and progress, it is also best friends with corruption. The aim of Sheck is to disrupt the stalemate, to get humanity to work towards solving the big problems without first having to convince them that there is a bigger problem. And to do this, we solve a problem they need no convincing exists, the increasing difficulty of making a living out of the current economic system. And you see, the current economic system, the way it is constructed in The Wolf of Wall Street, allows people like Jordan Belfort, who's now done his jail term.
I'd forgotten I was rich.
He forgot for a moment he was rich, so his jail was really like a retreat, a little monastic retreat. And as soon as he got out, he went to New Zealand, where instead of selling, pardon my language, selling shit to sheep, he is now teaching the sheeple to sell shit to one another by teaching them how to sell me this pen. And until we change the fiat monetary system, men like Mark Hanna, Gordon Balfour, the monster of Wall Street, Sam Bankman-Fried, and all of these people who keep coming out of the woodwork will rip you off. That's what they do. And you will fall for it because you're so desperate to get money. In This Is the Perfect Place for Paradise, I propose a completely different system in which we all get to be those kind, honest, honorable people who live in peace and harmony with each other and with the environment. That is our first nature. And that's a fact. What we're trying to do now is so against everything that we profess to believe in, that we think we believe in, that we think we are, that it is the thing that is causing us to become so incredibly sad, depressed, angry, and enraged. So I suggest watching The Wolf of Wall Street again in context of what is happening in the world today, and to understand that when an artist such as Leonardo DiCaprio takes on a role, he's not doing it to entertain you. He's doing it to educate you. And if you look at the movie from that point of view, you will take far more out of it than just looking at it as some sort of ribald, ridiculous comedy in which young men live out their worst natures. And I'm sort of uncomfortable with the idea of being followed, but that's just the way it works today. But I would much prefer it if you simply shared. Because it's in this book, if you share this book, or access to this book, to young people in your life, that we can actually start building a system based on an entirely new idea. And that's what we really need to do. So, until next time.